the longer you leave it, the harder it is.
Yeah.
So if you've been having sex a certain way for a year, that's way harder to correct than if the sex isn't great in the first month.
I think sometimes you need to cut the bullshit. I think we just need to be more forward and be okay with saying what we want.
So I've been in a relationship with this guy for 6 months and everything is great. He is a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I really think that we share a very similar sense of humor. Maybe he could be my penguin. However, there is one glaring problem. The sex is not good. Now, he's kind of more of the jackhammer kind of guy, where he really seems to only be interested in pleasing himself. Now, I have done all the things that you would normally recommend. We have had the conversations. I have tried to softly guide him to do the things in a way that I like it. The problem is he does it for about a week and then goes back to the jackhammering. Lovely. How do I navigate this, and how important is sex in having a great relationship?
I mean, how long is a piece of string? That's the question here. Is sex important to you in your relationship? Because some people don't care much for sex. Some people are happy to live a life where they love everything else about their partner and the sex is mediocre.
However, some people don't care much about sex, but I think even the people who don't care much about sex still care about bad sex. Like if the sex is not good, even if it's infrequent, it's not good.
Yeah, but this is...
Are you thinking about the radish?
I'm thinking about the woman from Harry Potter. Her name has just blanked my mind when she's like, it depends if, is the sex good? Because if it's good sex, I'd take the sex. But if it's bad sex, I'd rather have a radish.
You guys know who she is. We refer to her all the time.
She's fantastic.
She's a radish
it starts with M. Miriam Margolyes. That's it.
But it's okay. How bad is the sex? Is it just okay sex and not great? Or is it like, I can't stand this and it's uncomfortable and it hurts? And how important is sex to you? They're the two questions you really need to ask yourself. For me, I think sex is important. I wouldn't want to have sex that I hated or I thought was pretty mediocre.
And for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life. And you're also only 6 months in. I just think we all need to harden up a little bit. I truly believe this. I know you've tried the soft guiding and you've tried to sit down and talk. I think next time he does it, tell him to stop. Just say stop. That is so uncomfortable for me. I'm really not enjoying that. Let's try something else. Just like I think we just need to take a little bit of ownership. He'll probably be relieved at someone taking a little bit of control. But if he knew that you hated it enough to write into a podcast to be like fucking SOS, it's so bad, he'd be mortified.
Well, I don't know if I agree, because the thing is you've had the conversation and you said that he would then correct it for a week. He like pays attention to your needs. He then tries to get you off and then that goes out the window and he goes back to the thing that pleasures him. I kind of think he's not taking it that seriously. Like, it's like, oh, she asked me to clean up the house, so I did it for a week. I've done job done. It's like he seems to be prioritizing his way of pleasure over your way of pleasure. And maybe that's how he gets off, is like he needs it to be like.
But that's why I don't think.
Too far?
No, that's yes. A lot of people do get off like that. A lot of men get off like that. But
the worst.
That's why I think maybe she hasn't been hard enough. If you've had that conversation once before, I can guarantee you it was a soft conversation. Like no one goes in hard on the first convo. Everyone tries to like beat around the bush or be like, let's try this. Or I think sometimes you need to cut the bullshit, especially when you say you've tried other things. I think we just need to be more forward and be okay with saying what we want.
What would you do if you were in a relationship with someone and the way that they got off was something that you didn't enjoy? So for example, let's say you don't like deep throating and the only way that they were able to come was, sorry, this is very graphic, but just go with me, was by deep throating. And so there was a very obvious mismatch in the way in which the two of you feel pleasure.
I'd call bullshit. There's not one way to get off. There's no one in the world that's like, I can only get off by holding your head on my dick. Like it's like he's just full of it.
He's been watching too much porn, if that's the case.
Yeah, and there's always other ways to figure out what would work for both of you, and that's what you guys need to do. Like the jackhammer doesn't work for you. Maybe you on top doesn't work for him. So let's try something else that will get you both there. Or maybe he's got to get you off first and then you let him jackhammer for a minute. I don't know. Like I don't know what the answer is, but it's not to lay there in silence. Like the answer is definitely to have a more harsh conversation. I always think of it this way. That conversation will be uncomfortable, but what is worse is them thinking they're doing a good job and you hating it to the point that you are talking to other people about it. Like that is a conversation that can be fixed in your relationship.
Yeah. And also I think the problem with these types of things is the longer you leave it, the harder it is.
Yeah.
So if you've been having sex a certain way for a year, that's way harder to correct than if the sex isn't great in the first month.
Like 15 years deep.
Totally.
Like...
It's not impossible to correct. I don't want anyone to think that like you can't have a better sex life no matter where you are in your relationship. But I think it hits different when you're like, hey, that thing you've been doing for the last 6 years, I haven't actually enjoyed it and I'm only now being truthful about it.
And you need to hit different.
And you need to hit different. Exactly. Maybe it needs to be a bit more pointed in terms of like not just describing what it is that you want, but a bit more pointed in like, hey, we had this conversation. It was really great for me for a week. And then it feels like you stopped caring about the things that pleasure me and get me off and just went back to what was priority for you. And I don't know, I kind of, you said that he's a really amazing guy and he's really funny and you share all these other great similarities and like, you know, he kind of levels up in all the other ways and things that you want in a relationship. But I also don't think that we should be settling for someone who only levels up in a certain amount of categories. Do you know what I mean? I think if sex is important to you, it's important to you. And it has to also be something that is fulfilling for you. But I don't think that you have to discard the relationship because he's not able to get you there right now. I think that there are many more conversations that need to be had. And if you do have it more directly and he does turn around and in another week's time just does the same thing, then I would be going, okay, well, is my pleasure a priority for him? And is this something that I'm going to be okay with for the rest of my life potentially or the rest of this relationship?
Yeah, you'll also start to build a lot of resentment and potentially get to the point of no return.
Yeah, you're not going to want to have sex with him.
That's what I mean. It's going to get to the point where you get the ick because every single feeling that you have is a direct response to that action. So every time you have sex, you're going to develop a feeling of like, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to get off. I don't like this. I'm not enjoying it. You're not going to want to do it anymore. Then that's going to build resentment. Then you're going to have an argument. And it's all so avoidable at the end of the day. Also, just say to him, I'm never going to come like this. Hey, I'm not going to come like this. Can we try something different?
Have you ever been in a relationship where the guy was great, but the sex wasn't and it never got better? Keisha's nodding.
No, I haven't. But that's because I didn't really date. I wasn't in a lot of relationships. I have dated people where the sex has not been compatible, but I've had those conversations early and we've figured out what works for both of us. It's only not compatible because we liked this exact conversation.
You like different things.
I have had this exact conversation.
What was your experience, Keish?
I've had the experience where like it's fine, but it's definitely not good. It reduced my desire. You know, it reduced my kind of capacity to want to have sex all the time. And I think that whether that had an impact on how successful the relationship was, probably, like realistically, if you don't have that much desire for them to be intimate, it probably does reduce the longevity of how long you can be together. But I think it depended on the period of life that I was in and how much kind of stability I wanted in my life, I suppose, because I think often you can have really lustrous sex and like that really animalistic type where you maybe can actually be more confident with saying what you like because you don't really care if you offend the other person. I think for this person's question, it's hard because the 6-month mark is kind of where things start to get a little bit more serious. And if you leave it too much longer, it's really awkward to bring up, but you can't necessarily bring it up at the start at risk of them getting so offended that they're like, well, I don't want to keep dating you. And I think I can be a little bit conflict adverse and I didn't really say much. I would maybe guide and say maybe this is my advice. Keep repeating what you like. Because if you repeat it enough and they're still not picking up on it, then that kind of gives you an indication as to who they're going to be in other aspects of life as well and whether they want your perspective and whether they're keen to pleasure you.
Yeah, but they're past that. You're past the point of just being in sex and being like, stop there, I like that bit. Like, and also one thing you said there, Keish, that I want to make a note on is like you said, you're conflict avoidant. This shouldn't be a conflict. This is not a conflict.
Yeah.
This is just and I think we sometimes put it on ourselves when we build up the anxiety and that we're nervous and we feel like we're going to offend someone. And when you bring that energy, it sometimes makes the situation something that it's not.
Have you ever had someone say to you, I don't like that, stop doing that, when you're like being intimate with them?
Well, no, because most guys just do it. Most guys don't have the same issue as women, right? Like most guys, it's easier. We all know it is easier to pleasure a man than it is to a woman. That's a fact.
Is it? Okay, maybe it's nitpicking, but maybe it's not conflict avoidance. Maybe it's people pleasing because
That would make sense.
Yeah, like maybe it's not this feeling of like, I want to avoid conflict, because obviously it's not going to end in a row. Like no one's going to get angry about it. But it does sort of like really, I think if you're someone who is a people pleaser, who doesn't want to tell someone that they're doing a bad job because you don't want to disappoint them or hurt their feelings, you want to keep everything pleasant, it makes it really hard to tell someone that you're not enjoying what they're doing that is supposed to be pleasurable to you. The only reason why I think that this situation is different is because you have said it and he did it and now he's choosing not to do it again. So he knows he's just either a little bit lazy in the bedroom or he prioritizes himself. And so I think be careful with how much you have to remind someone of the things that you like. You know, we have this conversation about everything else in our lives, right? Like if you got to constantly tell your partner that they've got to clean up after themselves, that's going to get really annoying real quick. If you're constantly having to tell your partner that they have to be softer or go down on you for a bit or like be gentle or whatever it is in the bedroom, that's going to get really fucking annoying after a while.
Of course, you don't want to offend somebody, but you don't go into it and say, hey, you're not doing a good job. You're not getting me off. You're shit in bed. You're lazy in bed. You're not saying that. You're going to him and you're saying, hey, I can't orgasm in that way. Like for me personally, my body needs this. I need to try and do this. Can we figure out how to do this? You're not putting the blame on someone else because at the end of the day, it's not just his fault. It's his fault if he doesn't completely listen to you and respond. But he's doing what he likes. And if you haven't brought it up enough, he thinks he's doing an okay job. But just say to you, I need to try something else. My body needs to do this because it does. It's just a different way of saying it. You're not putting the blame on someone else and you're not putting all this offense onto somebody else.
I think this is actually a really interesting, like, where do you draw the line between sexual empowerment, having boundaries, stating what you like, and also not wanting to offend someone in something that is as sensitive as when you're being intimate. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that there's anything that we kind of feel a more precious amount of validation about. You know, if someone's to come to you and be like, you're really not great to have sex with, that's something that can so deeply crush you. But exactly as you've mentioned, Laura, if the conversation has already happened, if he already kind of fixed it for a couple of days and then has gone back to being exactly how he was before and kind of disregarded the fact that you've stated you didn't like it, that's actually a conversation about respect. Yeah. That's whether he's respecting you and respecting the fact that you also should be enjoying the experience and it should be pleasurable for you too. And I couldn't help but extrapolate what that would mean in other aspects of our lives as we got further down the relationship. And that might be being a little bit dramatic, kind of assuming that if you don't take my opinions into consideration in this situation, are you not going to take them into consideration in others? I don't know if they will necessarily marry up, but it's indicative to me that that may be the case down the track.
Yeah, I think that there's like another element to it about like being validated and being heard, along with like actually wanting to orgasm at the same time. I think that there's like a couple of layers to this, which absolutely, like you said, Britt, communication is like the most important thing. But there is only so long you can communicate with someone who's not listening.
But this is why this is so hard to answer, because it depends how that first conversation went down.
Yeah.
It depends how soft and subtle she was. Did she just say, can we try something else? Which is a great way to start, right?
Yeah.
That is a great entry conversation. He was probably like, yeah, tried it for a week and went back. But if you had a full conversation where you're like, I hate where you jackhammer me, I will never come off and I'm uncomfortable, and he still does it, then yes, it's extremely disrespectful. What I'd recommend every single person does right now, if you're listening to this, is go and have this exact conversation with your partner tonight. Literally say, hey, I was listening to Life Uncut today. If I was uncomfortable with something you did in bed, would you, or someone, your partner, would you want me to tell you, or would you, like, how would you want that conversation to go? Because I have these conversations with Ben all the time about these Ask Uncuts. Like, I ask his opinion. I'm going to 100% tonight ask him this question and say, if I was unhappy with someone, with you in bed, would you want me to do it differently?
I have one more question to add to that.
Yeah.
And because sometimes it's hard to bring up sex questions with your partner because you're like, when is the right time? Here is your litmus to go forth and ask whatever it is that you want. Today I was listening to Life Uncut and they said to go and ask your partner, what is the one thing that you would like to do in the bedroom that you're not doing? So like open that conversation up, ask your partners, like, what is the one thing that you would like me to do that I'm not doing, or that you would like to try that we haven't tried yet? And if you put it on us, it makes it way easier for you to say it to them, because it's like, hey, I'm just doing my Life Uncut homework. I'm not just coming to you with like my random request about wanting to use a vibrator on this or that. Like, it will give you the opportunity to open it up without it feeling like it's on you. Not about just how you want to be pleasured, but like bringing something new into the bedroom.
Yeah.
You guys thought you came to Life Uncut for just an easy listening experience, but now you have homework to do and you must report back.
But I think a lot of you will find, and we'll go put some polls on Life Uncut. I think a lot of you will find your partner's answer is going to be like, yes, please tell me. If I'm doing something you don't like, of course I want to know. And I think that that'll take away that stigma attached or the nervousness that you have. And then you can be like, thank fuck, because I hate when you do this.